PvP is officially dead in Dune Awakening. I know, it only took 2 weeks to dramatically change everything about this game, but that's what happens when you make seismic adjustments to something that probably needed a more delicate touch. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and yeah, here we go. Man, it is surreal to read the game's first set of major patch notes because, as we have said many times before, changes are coming to this game. And seriously, strap in, because it has been a minute since we've seen a live service game make such colossal shifts in such a short period of time. And if this continues, Dune Awakening could look completely different just a few months from now. The biggest news from the patch notes for update 1.1.10, which is officially entering the PTR, is that the Deep Desert is undergoing a massive expansion of its PvE zones. Now, instead of just the A row tiles being PvE enabled, everything from row A all the way up to half of row E will be PvE only. This is huge for a number of reasons, but most importantly, takes the fundamental idea of the Deep Desert, which was supposed to be this largely PvP battleground rich with T6 resources, and makes half, yes, half of the 9x9 grid completely safe from any sort of PvP activity. In our opinion, this is a major overcorrection, and something we've talked about with our Dune Awakening coverage multiple times already. Funcom is walking a fine line, balancing the needs and wants of PvE players with the needs and wants of PvP players, and in this update, they firmly put their finger on the scale for PvE players. Not only that, but this update kinda went live less than 48 hours after they announced it, and less than 24 hours after they announced and launched a PTR with the sole focus of testing the content. Now, it was patch 1.1.7 or something like that, but it does implement most of these changes. And I'll tell you guys, I played all day on that PTR server and didn't even come close to reaching the Deep Desert. So that tells me one thing: not a single player got the chance to test the changes and provide legitimate feedback to the developers. This is troubling for a number of reasons. First, and in our opinion, it's a major overcorrection. The Deep Desert, from the announcement of the game, was supposed to be the most deadly and dangerous place on Arrakis, where guilds, which they said were a focus of their endgame approach, come together to try and claim dominance over the best resources and gear in the game. With the recent changes, we were expecting maybe 1 or 2 additional rows of the Deep Desert to be enabled for PvE, giving players some opportunities for resources, but keeping the Deep Desert largely PvP oriented. So for half of the Deep Desert to overnight get converted to a PvE zone, it's pretty nuts. Second, and this is definitely a sign of something more troubling, is the lack of testing and feedback the team received on this change. Now, I applaud the team for taking action so quickly to address some major concerns with the game and specific systems, because if they took too long, the community would be focused on that as an issue. But the problem is, the team announced their intended changes, deployed a PTR, and then didn't actually wait for anyone to test the content and provide feedback. If they did, they would know that the endgame guilds and largely the folks playing the game for PvP would have told them this essentially kills any PvP within the game. In fact, Livid was testing the live updates the first morning it was released and said that he could fly from the furthest end of the Deep Desert, the PvP area, into the now safe zone, halfway into E, in about 2 minutes. If you don't know the Deep Desert, then realize that's practically no time at all, and so long as you're a semi-competent pilot, that means you can easily escape even a mob of enemy players with relative ease. What's worse is that getting T6 resources is now so simple that it removes an entire layer of the game because it no longer has the threat of potential conflict. What once would take careful consideration and planning is now as mindless as farming copper, and in our opinion, that cheapens the game experience, especially since this is the end of the line in terms of current content. Third, and I can't understate this enough, is the massive changes to the Deep Desert overall, but the lack of changes to the Scout Ornithopter, which the team said they were planning to address and is currently the biggest pain point for players that frequent the Deep Desert. In the same update that transformed the Deep Desert, the team pushed out some changes to the Thopter, and you know what they did? Virtually nothing. They reduced the max speed of the Scout when equipped with rockets by 20%, and in a bewildering move, reduced the max speed of the Assault Ornithopter by 10% with rockets equipped. This is baffling, as they said their goal was to make other vehicles more enticing, but instead they're de-incentivizing the very thing they wanted to push players towards, the Assault Ornithopter. Also, and let's just be real, a 20% max speed reduction does practically nothing in the grand scheme of things. It actually means there will be less PvP overall, because as I said before, it only takes 2 minutes now to reach the PvE area safely from the extreme edges of the PvP parts of the deep desert. I really don't think it's overstating it when I say Funcom in 2 weeks have effectively killed PvP in Dune Awakening. Now, I want to continue to remind everyone that this is a live service game, and this is the first of many changes that will come to this game. But here's the issue with that. Players only have a certain level of tolerance for drastic change, and if too many things go in too many directions that players don't like, they'll leave and go play something else. In the same morning that the update went live, Livid noticed multiple players in the chat saying that the changes were too extreme, removing elements of the game they liked and would most likely quit. Now, you don't have to agree with that sentiment, far from it, but you do have to understand that every change, major or minor, is going to have an effect on players. And in this case, the change is so major that those players might actually leave the game to go play something else. I say all this because I genuinely enjoy Dune Awakening, and if you watched our official review of the game, you know that we spent 500 hours in the test servers ahead of launch and the official servers, and we are huge fans of the game's potential. But Funcom walks a tricky line, and as players that skew more towards PvP, we are absolutely affected by these changes in a negative way. We understand that most of Dune Awakening, and maybe even most of the community, is PvE, which is why the idea of a deep desert is so appealing to us, because we had a place that was unique to the way we like to play as a collective, as a guild. We expect change, and you should expect change, because that's how live service games operate, but too much change without proper testing and feedback is a recipe for disaster, and I think that is a troubling sign for a team that genuinely has an incredible game on their hands. Guys, let me know what you think and be honest. If you like these changes, tell us why in the comments below, and let's get a dialogue going about this game. We know for a fact that Funcom checks out our content, and I'm sure they'd appreciate the honesty of the community in the chat. And of course, as always, if you appreciate the work that goes into creating these videos, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up, and consider subscribing. We'll have more Dune Awakening in your feed soon, so keep it right here and never miss a thing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching. Play on.